have to start at the more recent time. I came to FAM because my granddaughter, who is now 5.5, on August 4th of 2018, we went to my oldest daughter's house to visit. And to back up a little, when Mackenzie was born, she's a nurse, and she had just started teaching at a university, and she was breastfeeding Kenzie, and she said, "Mom, I can't keep doing this. I can't do it and take her with me." And Kenzie was born over Christmas break between the semesters, and Katie said, "I'm going back to teach second semester." But she said, "I can't do it because I got to take Kenzie and I got to nurse her. Can you come and stay with us and come to work with me and stay with Kenzie?" So even though she had 2 older kids, I hadn't had the opportunity to get as close to those kids as I would have liked. And so I went and I would sit in her office every day while she taught 2 classes. And Kenzie and I obviously really bonded. I think I probably spent more time with Kenzie than I did with my own kids for a long time. So August 4th, we went to visit Katie and Josh at the house. It was my middle daughter's 25th birthday. We went up there, had family there. And when I got there, Kenzie was crying, and Kenzie never cries. She's just an amazing kid. I just can't say enough about her because she's always been way beyond her years in everything. And but she was really cranky, and she's never cranky. And she didn't want anybody to touch her except Grammy and Mom and Dad. She didn't want to walk, which is really weird because the child, she was 2.5 and she's climbing the trees on their farm behind her siblings. And I'm going, "What are you doing in the tree? You're too little to climb a tree." But she would be in the trees. Well, my daughter said, well, she hurt her ankle. We don't know how. But she also woke up with a little fever this morning. And throughout the day, she just got progressively crankier. And finally, that afternoon, I said, "You guys need to really take her to the emergency room. I think she's got a broken ankle." And my daughter, being a nurse, "No, she's fine. They're just going to send us home." And I said, "No, I'm staying here anyhow, so you guys take her to the emergency room." And so I put the kids to bed, and they didn't come home, and they didn't come home, and they didn't come home, and I thought, something's really bad. And finally, I called my daughter, and I said, "What is going on?" And she says, "They want to do blood work." I said, "What do you mean they want to do blood work?" And she said, "Mom, they came in, and they said, we're really worried about this bruising that she has." Well, we never noticed any. She's a typical kid. She's climbing trees at 2.5. Of course she's got bruises. And she said, "Mom, they want to do blood work." And as soon as she said it, I said, "Are they looking for leukemia?" And she said, "I'm pretty sure that's what it is." So she didn't ever call me back. But about 2 o'clock in the morning, my son-in-law came back to the house, and he said, and he'd obviously been crying, and he said, "I need to get us some clothes. We're going to be at the hospital for a while." And I said, "Does she have leukemia?" And he said, "Yes." So my world just fell apart. And the reason it fell apart was because I had lost the child myself. And all I could think of was, I'm going to lose Mackenzie too. And it's just not fair. It's not fair. I've already done this once. I can't do it again. And so she was at Dayton Children's for a week. She was only inpatient for a week. It was amazing. Everything went great. But then they got the genetic test back, and they said she has this KMT2A gene. And I started reading, and I went, "No, she can't have that. She's doing really well." We're 5 weeks into it, but she's doing great. This can't happen. And I talked to Katie, and of course she knew all about it. And with the KMT2A gene, I don't know, it's rare, so I haven't met more than a couple of people that know what it is or have dealt with it. But usually it happens in kids that are less than a year old or younger adults. It is very, very, very rare anyhow, but it's extremely rare for a 2.5-year-old to have it. So basically, the doctor said, "We don't have any idea what her prognosis is. She seems to be doing great, but we don't know what's going to happen because we haven't seen kids that at that age, typically. So they ended up transferring her from Dayton to Cincinnati Children's because at that point it was, I think, the number 2 cancer hospital in the nation. And so she went there. And Katie had found out 2 months before this that she was pregnant with baby number 4. But they also had the one that they're adopting, in the process of adopting, but they've had her for 5 years now. They had her. So this was actually going to be baby number 5. So Katie's pregnant. She's now got a child in active treatment for leukemia. She's also got a child they're adopting who was extreme preemie and has had a stroke before birth. So obviously she needed a lot of help at home. And so Grammy moved in pretty much permanently. I had already been there a lot of the time, but now I had my own bedroom. If I could stay for several weeks at a time, I did. But I also have a son with autism at home and a husband who has some major heart issues and had major heart surgery just a couple years before that. And so obviously I was needed at home too. So I would go back and forth, and I would spend most of my weekends at my house getting food and clothes and everything taken care of for my husband and son. And then I would go back to Katie's and stay, or I would go to the hospital and stay with Kenzie while Katie had other things she had to do. But Kenzie, it was amazing. I mean, she blew everybody away. The doctors, they don't know what to think. They don't know what to make of her. But then you read the paperwork about the KMT2A gene, and she has a 40% chance of surviving for 5 years. Well, the wonderful part of the story is she took her last dose of oral chemo on October 31st. She is through the maintenance. She's moving from monthly treatment or monthly blood work to every 2 or 3 months now, starting this month. But then to back up, so I came to FAM. I found FAM shortly after, and I don't know why Milt decided that I was Grammy. I have no idea. People don't normally like me, so why Milt decided to attach himself to me, I don't know, but I appreciate it very much. After I was at FAM for a while, I suddenly discovered that I didn't just need to be there for Kenzie, but I needed to be there because Wednesday, and I've shared this, so most of you know it already, Wednesday would have been our son's 29th birthday, our oldest son's 29th birthday. Our Zach was born on May 5th of 1992, and he was our second. Katie weighed 9'9" when she was born. So I did not get very big with Zach, and I kept saying to the doctor, something's wrong, I know something's wrong, and the doctor said, no, you're just going to have a nice normal-sized baby, and I said, that does not happen in my family. We have 9, 10-pound babies. And so I just felt like something was wrong, but my doctor was sure there wasn't. And I went in and I had him, and immediately, I didn't even get to hold him. I mean, they said there's something wrong with his heart, he's not breathing right, we have to take him. And they took him by ambulance to Riley. So you've heard about Riley, Teresa.
Yep.
I can't see, so I don't. Zach spent his entire life at Riley. I got to hold him one time for 10 minutes, and that was it. But he was born with a very rare heart defect, Epstein's anomaly, and I think there are 18 kids with that a year born in the United States. Usually the treatment is when they get to be 2 or 3 years old, they do an open heart surgery. Lots of times it's a total heart transplant. But in his case, he was so weak that he couldn't, they knew that wasn't going to happen. And so they had him on a respirator or a ventilator or whatever. I mean, he was doped up the whole time. And he actually got down to, at one point, he was down to 60% oxygen. And then they called us after he'd been there for a week, and they said, he's back on 100% oxygen. We don't know what's wrong. We don't know what's caused it, but something's wrong. And they were pretty sure there was internal bleeding. And so when they started checking, they found that he'd had a massive bleed in his brainstem. And I knew what it meant, but I didn't want to accept it, obviously. We had actually just recently had a friend whose 16-year-old son had passed away from leukemia, and I just, when her son died, I just thought, I know this baby's not going to survive. I feel like God was letting me prepare myself, because I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew something was. And so I told my husband, we have to prepare for the worst. And we were shuffling back and forth between Fort Wayne and Indianapolis. My mom came and stayed with Katie for a week, and then she had to go home. And so we were at the Ronald McDonald House for a little while, but we really didn't have maybe 4 days that we were actually down there with him, which I'm not sure that's something I can ever forgive myself for, because I should have been with him the whole time. But you guys know, when you have more than one kid, you have to figure out how to do it. And I had to be there for Katie too. She didn't understand why her brother wasn't going to come home. She knew Mom was going to have a baby, but where did the baby go? And so finally on Saturday the 16th of May, they called and they said, there's nothing we can do. We think we need to take him off the ventilator and keep him home. But they said, you have to choose. We can't make that choice. And I talked to my husband and said, we have to leave it in God's hands, because obviously we're going to keep him on this ventilator forever otherwise. So let's take him off the ventilator and see what happens. If God wants him to survive, he will. And so they took him, and I said, can we come down there? And they said, if we take him off the ventilator now, you won't make it down here in time. And I said, just do it. Just do it. And so they called us an hour later, and they said, he's gone. And it was, I was just crushed. It's been 29 years. Well, 29 years on May 16th. But it doesn't go away. And I'm going to tell you, it hurts. And when I listen to your stories, I think you guys have had it so much harder. At least I didn't have to go home to a place where he'd been. But on the other hand, I didn't get to go home to a place where he'd been. I got to hold my baby one time. And it's horrible. It does get easier. I promise you, it does get easier. But for me, because Krista said, because I have such a strong faith, I know that every day that passes here is one day closer to when I'm going to see my son and get to hold him for as long as I want. And after he died, I have 3 more wonderful children. Sometimes I don't think they're so wonderful. I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't have young adult kids, they get harder when they become young adults. But I have Hannah and Tessa and Zeke now. Tessa is hearing impaired, and she has ulcerative colitis. She has some kind of a genetic disorder, but we thought that they knew what it was. They haven't figured that out. It causes hearing loss, kidney issues. It can cause heart disease. That's what they think is what caused my husband's. And they also think now that maybe that was what caused Zach's heart defect. Zeke has autism, and he's fairly high functioning, but he will always live with us. Academically, he's amazing. He's a wonderful artist, but socially, he'll never be more than 10 or 12 years old. But you know what? It means that I have another baby that needs me, and I wouldn't have had Zeke if Zach had survived. So, anyway, my story's a little bit different, and I had a really hard time when we used to go to support group right after Zach died, because these moms would come in and they would say, I lost my child. Lots of times it was several babies that they had lost. They either had a late-term miscarriage or several stillborns with no answer. And to me, that was so much worse, because you have this perfect baby and no reason, no answers. At least I knew, I knew that my son would have not been okay here. And so to me, I felt like some ways I had it easy. It was so hard to hear these moms who didn't know why their babies had died. But they would look at me and go, how do you do it? You just keep going. You just keep going. And I have for 29 years. And I think that Kenzie's, I don't know, it's hard for me because I see my Katie now. I mean, she went through losing her brother. Now she's watching her daughter and not knowing for sure what's going to happen. And it hurts. I hurt because she hurts. I hurt because my Kenzie is sick and she's going through everything. But I hurt because I see my daughter hurting too. And it's just not fair. But it doesn't matter because life's not fair. And we have to grow. And I've had people say, why do you even talk about him? You know, just forget about him. He only lived 11 days. It's not... But I think, you know, if I don't tell people, if I don't share my story, I can't help anybody else. And honestly, that's the main reason that I've gone through things that I do, so that I can help others. And tell you that this life, it does go on. And 29 years from now, you may feel totally different than I do, but just know that you can go on. You really can. No matter what, you can. And if Kenzie has a relapse, we're going to keep going. I don't want it. I don't want to lose my Kenzie because I have 8 grandkids. I love them all, but Kenzie is, she's just different. And my connection with her has always been different, and it always will be. She says to me, Grammy, you're my best friend. Aww. And she tells me all the time, Grammy, when I grow up, you're going to live with me. Well, I can go for that. That's fine. But it just, yeah. So anyway.